I don't think y'all heard, man. I just want to say Happy Valentine's Day.
That's Outkast, Happy Valentine's Day. That's their song. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 650 stations around the country. On Pacifica and NPR and low-power FM and college and community radio stations, on public access TV and PBS TV stations and both TV satellite networks, on Dish Network, Channel 9415 Free Speech TV, 9410 Link TV, on DirecTV Channel 375 Link TV, and we are video and audio podcasting at democracynow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish for any radio station to take, as over 150 are. Those transcripts of headlines in Spanish are also available at our website. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, today is Valentine's Day. Yes, it's a time for love, chocolate, flowers, candlelight dinners, and diamonds. But it's also noted for hyper-consumerism. The National Retail Federation expects total spending across the country today to top $17 billion. Today, we look a little deeper into chocolates and diamonds, two of the main luxury industries that have come to expect huge profits on Valentine's Day. Now, what's not to love about chocolates or diamonds, particularly those that have been certified conflict-free by the International Kimberley process? Well, our guest will give you some details. We'll start by looking at the chocolate industry. Over 70% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa, and 40% comes from just one country, the Ivory Coast, where child labor is still widespread. 7 years ago, chocolate companies agreed to abide by a voluntary protocol to abolish child labor. But a scathing new report by veteran journalist and author Christian Parenti says hardly any progress has been made.
Christian Parenti is a correspondent for The Nation magazine and writes for several other publications. His latest article appears in the February 4th edition of Fortune magazine. It's called Chocolate's Bittersweet Economy. Christian Parenti joins us here in our Firehouse studio. We're also joined in Washington, D.C. by William Guyton. He's the president of the World Cocoa Foundation. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Christian, we'll begin with you. Tell us what you found. When did you go to the Ivory Coast?
I went to Ivory Coast in October with photographer Jessica Dimmock, and we went to investigate conditions in the cocoa industry because for 7 years there has been an international protocol called the Harkin-Engel Protocol. 7 years ago, there was an attempt to pass real legislation that would regulate the chocolate industry. The chocolate industry pushed back and instead created this voluntary protocol, the Harkin-Engel Protocol, which sets out to eliminate the worst forms of child labor in West Africa. So 70% of all cocoa, the raw ingredient for chocolate, comes from West Africa, and 40% of world supply comes from one country, Ivory Coast. So we went to the Ivory Coast to essentially fact-check the claims of the chocolate industry to see if they had made changes. And what we found was that there had been no substantive changes. There were still many children working using pesticides, machetes, carrying heavy loads during school, unable to attend school, being injured due to their labor. And the way the Harkin-Engel Protocol works, I should say that actually the first deadline for the Harkin-Engel Protocol to achieve real change in the chocolate industry, which is to say to eliminate child labor, was 2005. They missed that deadline. So they were given an extension by Harkin-Engel till July 2008. The chocolate industry works through an NGO that it established called the International Cocoa Initiative. They claim that tens of millions of dollars have been spent throughout West Africa to eliminate child labor. What we found in Ivory Coast was that the International Cocoa Initiative has one employee who shares an office at in the basement of a law firm, and that the many claims of collaboration with local NGOs and development projects did not pan out. They were unable to show us anything. The only thing that they could show us was an orphanage where most of the kids were actually not from the cocoa sector, and where the head of the orphanage said that there had been about 8 kids over the last several years staying for between 3 and 4 months who had been in the cocoa sector. So it seemed that the Harkin-Engel Protocol was doing nothing, and what we found in the countryside were farmers working very hard and their children working hard next to them. The way that the cocoa industry is structured...
Well, before you go on, I would like to bring in William Guyton from the president of the World Cocoa Foundation. Your response to whether the Harkin-Engel Protocol and the industry's self-policing is working?
Well, first of all, I'd like to wish everyone good morning and happy Valentine's Day. This is Bill Guyton speaking. And before I get started on talking about the protocol and progress that's been made, I just wanted to spend just a minute or two talking about the context of cocoa farming. There are about 5 million small-scale cocoa farmers around the world that produce this important crop, and about 2 million or more are found in West Africa. And as you both have mentioned, about 70% of the crop comes from West Africa, and Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire is the most important producer with about 40% of the supply. Most of the farms in West Africa are small-scale family farms with 5 acres or less of land holdings. And they're located in very remote areas of the countryside. Cocoa only grows about 20 degrees north or south of the equator, so it's a very tropical crop. It grows in association with other tree crops. It's a shade-loving tree. One of the major problems that we have in cocoa is that there are high losses from diseases and pests. About a third of the crop is lost each year to disease and pest problems. Another problem, as the Fortune article magazine pointed out, was the fact that there are difficulties with infrastructure, roads, and access to education and health. And just reading through the article, we certainly agree with many of the findings of the Fortune article report. First of all, that farmer incomes are important. We couldn't agree more on that. And our approach at the World Cocoa Foundation is to help work with farmers to improve farming techniques so that farmers can get a better yield or become more productive than they have been in the past. And we also encourage farmer organizations to form. So we do have programs on the ground specifically on farmer outreach, improving incomes, looking at improving environmental conditions, as well as social issues, which is the main topic of the discussion today. And that includes child labor and general labor on the farm, as well as health issues such as HIV/AIDS and malaria prevention.
So, Guyton, on the issue of whether you had met the goals of the Harkin-Engel protocols, why had they not been met, and what are the problems with that?
Well, the Harkin-Engel protocol is something that has never been attempted before in any agricultural sector or any sector to speak of. What we're looking at doing is trying to improve conditions across 2 million small-scale farms in West Africa. And to do this in a way that surveys are conducted in the field through partnerships with the public sector and the private sector, as well as experts in labor. And these surveys have already been carried out in both Ivory Coast and Ghana and publicly reported by both of those governments. And those reports are posted on select websites for people to view.
Let me bring Christian Parenti in to respond to that.
This is, the key fact here is that the chocolate industry is controlled, the cocoa industry is controlled by large corporations at the ports that set the price. If the chocolate industry wanted to improve conditions by raising prices, the Harkin-Engel protocol would have attempted to set prices, and they have not done that. What he's talking about, education, this, that, well, we went out and looked and saw what was happening. There was usually nothing, and the one thing we did find was this education attempt. Really what that translates as for the average farmer is an intimidation campaign. You go out into the countryside, you talk to them about the Harkin-Engel protocol. Most people know nothing, but they will tell you, well, the police have told us that if we're caught using our children in the fields, then maybe there will be a boycott of our chocolate and we'll starve. But all of this stuff about education, this high-minded rhetoric, does not pan out on the ground. And what you have is a very corrupt government in Cote d'Ivoire, considered to be one of the most corrupt in the world by Transparency International, that works hand in glove with corporations like Cargill, ADM, that sell cocoa to the international market and make enormous profits. Cargill made $2.3 billion profit last year, and they control a huge part of the trade. One of the things we found were there's cocoa cooperatives that farmers are attempting to form themselves so that they can get better prices, so they can have some leverage against the chocolate industry. Cargill and other firms have, one, illegally entered the interior to set up their own warehouses where they buy from small farmers. This is against the law in Ivory Coast, but as one person said, the illegal is normal in Ivory Coast. The other thing that they've done is they're lending money to co-ops, which are attempting small groups of small farmers banding together to become their own middlemen. They lend money to these farmers. Then when they receive cocoa from them, they claim that the cocoa is not of sufficient quality and they don't pay them enough. The farmers fall into debt. And in several cases, we found examples of co-op members who had been illegally arrested. In this one case, on orders of Cargill bribed port police to drive into the interior and to seize these farmers, put them in jail until the rest of the co-op members could collect enough money to pay the debt. So this is, one, it's about getting money, but it's also about